2016 is in the history books, where it belongs. Happy New Year from the wacky world of MultimediaJay. MultimediaJay radio style.
I'd rather watch a well-edited 3-minute video than a long ramble fest. Well, most of the time. The only reason you get away with that is because you have a personality and you're not a gossip whore. You're one of the few who can make a 30-minute video that doesn't bore me. The Delosaurus is the one true computer system. This channel's not about you, it's about the Delosaurus. You're not making videos about the Delosaurus. The Delosaurus is making videos about you.
I'm surprised you didn't say nothing about the death of Carrie Fisher. For me, that was the final straw for 2016. Oh, wait a minute. I found it in another video. Mine must be getting kind of fuzzy. But yeah, her death was pretty bad. Likewise with Debbie Reynolds the very next day. 4 dudes who randomly play cow sounds on computers love MultimediaJay radio style.
Semper Reformanda. Happy 2017, everybody. A good chunk of the town is getting over hangovers, and I'm jumping on the microphone like a nerd. Well, it's not like nerds are jumping on microphones or anything, but AV nerd, to say the very least. Just a little bit groggy from fatigue from being up a little later than usual last night. I wasn't actually planning on staying up to see midnight roll around, but as you all know from what happened with Tuxedo, fate had other plans. Still, though, it was a lot of fun to go 10, 9, 8, blah, 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 3, 2, 1, Semper Reformanda. For those of you who don't know the history and whatnot, 2017 is the 500th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation or German Reformation. Either way, I already had the year marked as a year of change and lots of things along those lines. Not necessarily New Year's resolutions, but I'm pretty fed up with quite a bit of stuff, and I want things to be very different by this time next year. Semper Reformanda is a cousin of Semper Fi, and it references always be reforming. So that may be my slogan for this year as well, as we clean up a few things, reorder a few things, and start doing a few things differently. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MultimediaJay Radio Style for January 1st, 2017. And I've had no problem remembering 2017 because the syllables are different, and I'm not putting that pause in the middle like I did for 2016. So maybe this alternating year-over-year thing actually can help you get your years straight. So next year will be 2018. So maybe it is a syllable thing. 2017, 2017, 2017. We'll figure it out as we go along. Of course, if I do mix up the years, as tends to happen around this time of the rolling year, it'll be 10 times worse than normal because of what a dog 2016 was. Yes, sirree, Bob. I am with John Oliver on this one. Of course, his clip from his HBO show is going viral all around YouTube, giving 2016 the giant FU, and quite frankly, I don't blame anybody for saying, see ya. I mean, how many celebrities did we lose? I mean, especially in that run-up. I mean, there was that guy from MASH that died on New Year's Eve, but then you had people starting stuff. Oh, look, the Queen's sick. She might be next. Someone do a fundraiser for Betty White to be in a bubble until 2017. Of course, we had Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds right around Christmas time. Yeah, that was pretty bad. But how many, just the fact that I can think of so many people off the top of my head, like Prince and David Bowie and so many people that we lost last year. So it's definitely a forgettable year as far as Hollywood is concerned. But then again, this year is probably a forgettable year for Mariah Carey. I don't know if you folks have seen it. She had basically a lip sync gone wrong moment on New Year's Eve, or maybe whoever was her producer last night, who's probably without a job this morning, had a bit too many, got a little too celebratory, so to speak, because, oh, look, another singer who has her lip sync setup completely fall apart at some major performance. Whether it's Mariah Carey or Ashley Simpson all those years ago, or Britney Spears, I think, had one of these happen too. Why do singers lip sync? I mean, are people that superficial that they expect studio quality performance? It's like the running joke about how Dragon Force can't play any of their songs because they're too fast. They're a speed metal band, by the way. You might have heard a few of their songs because they've become memes over the years, but I was into power metal long before the memes began, listening to Rhapsody, now known I think as Rhapsody of Fire, and Blind Guardian and Stratovarius, and I had a Saturday night metal show in college that played melodic metal to kind of balance out the Tuesday night angry metal show where it was all those Cookie Monster bands. Yes. That was one of the things I went for. Saturday night was, well, it also didn't help that my show is in the same general time of night as Dee Snider's House of Hair. So I took just a little bit of influence from that whole wild and crazy rock DJ thing that he had going on. The House of Hair. If it's not metal, it's crap. Such inspiration for a Saturday night metal show in a time slot that nobody wanted because it was smack dab in the middle of party time on Saturday nights in college. But yeah, enough of that embarrassing stuff from all those years ago. Well, we're going to get into a little discussion on embarrassment very shortly, but I just want to say, with regards to Mariah Carey, I would not have had a problem if she stopped singing certain songs because she's in her mid-40s now. If she can't sing in the whistle register anymore like she did back in the 90s, I think that should be perfectly understandable. If people really are that nutso that she feels the need to lip-sync or something like that, I just... Well, you know, people can... You know, age happens, folks. Creeping decrepitude is a thing that affects us all. So... You know, do we really want to hold it against her? Shoot, I imagine there's probably some shallow folks out there that are like, oh, dude, she's fat nowadays. Okay, buddy, let's see how good you look in your mid-40s. Thank you very much. So, yeah. I don't get the whole lip sync thing. Never have, never will. It's live. You don't have the same tricks up your sleeve as you do in a studio environment. Obviously, it's not reasonable to expect these recording artists. Hey, you know, even the whole thing where they say recording artist instead of singer is... No, recording artist. Okay, you don't have access to the same bag of tricks when you're live, and you can't pre-record or re-record or mix things or play around after the fact or what us video AV guys would call do stuff in post. Okay, so you lose that. That's going to take a little something out of the live experience, and you make up for it with, like, really working the crowd or something, but... I don't know. What happened to Mariah Carey was kind of funny, but I kind of feel bad for her at this point, because... You know, the question always is with these sorts of issues is what drove someone to feel like that was necessary. Okay, she's 20 years older now than when she started singing in those screechy high whistle songs she used to do. Look, okay, if age happened to her like it happens to all the rest of us, I mean, it's understandable. It's part of life. But I guess Hollywood and TMZ and all those gossip nuts that publish all that stuff in whatever are probably like, oh my goodness, Mariah Carey, epic meltdown in Times Square. Oh, brother, let them have their fun, because it's the only fun they'll have. Love to see some of them try to sing on New Year's Eve, waiting for the ball to drop in Times Square, in front of all those people and all those cameras. Let's see if they can keep their composure at least half as much as she did. What was that again about not criticizing someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes? Anyways, we're nearly 8 minutes in, and we haven't even gotten to the main topic of what this is going to be about. So, yeah, I'm a little out of it from being up so late last night, but I do want to talk about embarrassment. As, you know, with the return of WWMJ, with the ruins of Tuxedo, even though the whole thing with Tuxedo didn't go as I would have liked last night, it does bring to mind some of the ways YouTube has changed over the past 10 years. This was my first foray into their new end screen tool, where actually you can have the algorithms work to your favor by suggesting another one of your videos based on who's watching specifically, and it takes a lot of the work out of those old end screens I used to never bother with. It's really kind of cool, and it keeps a little bit of innovation going on YouTube so they can remain the leader of the pack, so to speak, although they have plenty of issues elsewhere that would be worth looking into if they want to keep their user base happy. But we've discussed that how many times now? But anyways, it's been really fun playing around with this new tool. Probably might try to retroactively apply it to certain other videos in the back catalog as well. It's just going to be difficult because I used to put "thanks for watching" mega big text all over the place. I'd pretty much have to plaster over the end of it or something. So, that will be a little bit challenging, but maybe, it'd be a nice to have, but I don't want to slow down uploading anything for the sake of stuff that people have already seen for the most part. We'll fiddle around with this and see what we can do with it. But I was, however, thinking, as I went through this whole thing with some of the algorithm-driven options that you have, like you can link to your most recent upload, or you can link to something based on whoever's watching, what they tend to watch the most. And I was thinking, what if somebody really, really likes my horrible old MultimediaJay vlogs from like 2013 or 2014? No, that was dead by then. 2012, 2011. So I kind of killed everything off the old-fashioned way of doing things in 2013 with some of the changes to YouTube at the time. And that's where WWMJ had its roots. Matter of fact, I'm heading off. I imagine I might have to head off a few trolls at the past that are like, why are you calling it celebrating 10 years? WWMJ hasn't been around for 10 years. No, but I have. And what is WWMJ went by some previous names earlier, such that I have a playlist for the old MultimediaJay vlogs that I jokingly call WWMJ Season 0. They span from 2008 to about 2013 or so when I canned the old series, but this is something we need to talk about in terms of anybody doing anything at all on YouTube, and that is quite simply, do not do anything on YouTube if you can't handle being embarrassed. Because when you do anything on here, and I'm not even talking social media gaffes or anything, or maybe you do something stupid that you learn very, very quickly is a bad thing to do when producing a video or something like that. But even if you somewhat know what you're doing when you get started, as you develop and as you gain experience and develop some skill at this sort of thing, even if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you find better ways of doing things and things along those lines and better ways of conducting yourself in front of a camera, you are going to be embarrassed at your old stuff. This doesn't really apply to any one individual. It's an overall thing. If you give a darn about how good of a job you do, you will be embarrassed at some point. It's kind of like when you video conference for the first time. You know how many people out there, the minute they see themselves on camera in a video conferencing setup for the first time, the very first thing they do is crack up? Or better yet, how about if you play with some kind of voice recorder? In my day, it was tape recorders. Nowadays, I'm sure phones can do the same thing. But the first time you record yourself and you hear yourself, you're like, do I really sound like that? So we all have to take those first steps at some point later on, but it becomes way too easy to be embarrassed by those first steps. In my case, I don't have to go back very far to run into stuff that's kind of embarrassing. Even just Season 1 WWMJ 2013-2014, some stuff that I did back then, I'm like, how did I do this back in those days? The roots of WWMJ as we know it today is from the Season 2 2015 future year run, so to speak, where I brought in the background music and stuff like that and really established kind of the pattern that I stick to nowadays. But there is a bit of a problem where, there is going to come a day where I'm going to watch that stuff and I'll be like, wow, I can't believe I did that back then. It just happens. As you do more of this stuff and refine your technique, you start really hating your old stuff. And I can go back further, too. Season 0, 2008 to 2012, with the older cameras. How did I put up with that horrible Samsung camera for so long when Sony Handycams give you a lot more bang for buck? Of course, I was like, oh, look, Samsung nerd camera, it'll charge off a USB. So sacrifice decent picture and have bits in the corner on every upload, and sacrifice decent audio with the microphone sounding like I had a sock in my mouth half the time. All in the name of a nerd camera that can charge off USB. I got news for you. The Sony that I have, and I've had for a couple of years now, the 1080p-ish, I say ish because it's an entry-level camcorder from a couple of years ago, but the Sony Handycam that I roll with nowadays, so to speak, I haven't pimped out the rims yet or anything. The Sony soup can, so to speak, Handycam that I work with nowadays, even though it's got a couple of years on it by now, charges off a USB. So, and I think the other one does too, as long as you don't turn on the review mode or something like that. The SD one does that too, but I was like, oh, look, it can charge off a USB. Isn't that awesome? No, what matters is the video, and that's mattered more. I mean, the biggest problem I have with the soup can that I record with these days is the teeny microphone built in. But the Canon point and shoot that I experimented with beginning last year, I can say that now, woohoo! Basically has the opposite problem. Bit too much sock in mouth with the audio, but it's not tinny at the very least. But as I, rewind the clock, of course, it's not all me. Of course, YouTube had more limits back then. Time limits and size limits, and you had to do SD because an HD thing would be too big or something along those lines. Then you get back into the digital camera and the DV tape era with some of the stuff from back in those days. And, it just gets really embarrassing. I mean, I've been tempted to do a Rhett Super A parody of myself versus my first video ever where I make fun of myself 10 years ago with some of the stupid stuff, like talking like YouTube discovered me. And that was kind of like flubbery at its best. Like, flubbing stuff. It's more like no, it's not like I was some kind of talent search or anything. I discovered the site and became addicted to it. That's a better way of describing things. But hey, you don't know back in those days. Go back even further, pre-YouTube. I had the last college project that I had that was AV related was a full-length mock newscast, and that was the culmination of all 4 years of being an AV geek in college. And we were the first to present. My group was the first to present, and the class was taught by an adjunct who actually was a news anchor at one of the local television stations. And this is before my college built their TV studio that they eventually put in because things are getting more audio-visual, and they somewhat correctly guessed that there would be something like YouTube coming along with the advent of broadband. So eventually they put in some better ways to record things than what was available to me at the time. But if we go back to that project, we're talking Super VHS camcorder, which I had to digitize using my old LeadTech card hooked up to the S-Video camera, as well as trying to hide anyways, a stage mic just off the side because we didn't have anything we could hang over anybody's heads. We didn't have any lavaliers. There was one, but it was reserved for college presentations where the administrators would have some big publicity event and stuff. But just the kind of skunkworks way of making that. And I thought it was so awesome back then that I did all that before the formal television production studio was even built. I thought that was awesome. Today, it's pretty embarrassing. And it is VHS based, so the lack of quality very much shines through when I watch it today. I really can't watch it anymore. It's just, and this is the thing. This is going to happen to all of you. If any of you are doing this stuff and you want to know what to expect to get embarrassed. Because as you don't even have to try or take any formal classes. Just the experience you get and refining your technique is eventually going to lead to some kind of embarrassment when you watch your old stuff. That plus the changing YouTube environment is one of the reasons why I have the Classics series in the first place, so I can explain the historical context of some of what's going on at the very beginning of the video. It's basically the next evolution of the retro reel, but I really have to take a serious look. With this Reformation theme for this year, I really have to take a look at the back catalog and see, is there stuff on here that I really still want representing me that shouldn't be represented with some element of, this is a product of its time? And that's what you run into nowadays with some particularly egregious examples of content out there. Like if you buy, for example, some Disney history cartoons where you see Donald Duck as a Nazi in World War II. Fortunately, if you watch the cartoon, it turns out to be a bad dream, and he's like, oh yeah, I love being American, woo, freedom. But some of what, even in animation, even Tom and Jerry cartoons, classic animation is a product of its time and the way society was at the time, and elements of that culture creep its way into even sometimes classic film productions. I mean, watch some old colorized black and white movies at some point, and maybe some of the mannerisms, or even television at the time, and some of the mannerisms might even make you cringe, but that would be, of course, anachronism, putting your 2000s, 2010s viewpoint, aka this millennium, on stuff from way back then, and realizing that a lot of this stuff was more of a thing, a lot of stuff you object to was more of a thing back then. Not to relate anyone's YouTube back catalog to cartoons that are sold nowadays on DVD sets with a disclaimer that these animations are a product of their time, so there's some if there's some latent racism still in there or something, it's because of when they were made and things along those lines. And denial of history and whitewashing of history is no way to learn from history's mistakes. I'm not saying that everybody's back catalog goes to that extreme, but you are going to feel that as it's going to feel like that as you do more and more of this stuff and your technique gets refined. You're like, how did I do things that way back in those days? But the big thing is if you want to represent everything with its context explained, especially if you're getting trolled for it. I have seen some trolls that leave comments on ancient, outdated videos like, oh, you turned out to be wrong about this, or something along those lines. And I imagine that this YouTube thing where you can have based on what people are watching, it recommends another video at the on the end screen. I imagine that could probably lead to an uptick in that. But as part of the whole Reformation theme and things along those lines, I really am thinking at this point that the classics should be greater, and a best of for that matter. And it may be time to do some cleaning as well with some of the stuff that's on here. However, it's the back catalog, as far as things are concerned, is also prey to YouTube's changing conditions. There's some videos that I will convert to classics because of the changing climate on YouTube, even if they've been fine on here for years and years. And that's one of the reasons, too, why I didn't mention the vlogs in the teaser for Beyond 10 Years, because the vlogs don't have much of a future. I said I wanted to take away the whole idea of a side series, because what it leads to is everybody watches one thing and nothing else because they think that's what you put the most effort into. It may have nothing at all to do with their personal tastes and what they like or don't like. Just a matter, he probably puts the most effort into these. That other stuff's probably crap, and it's filler material. And that's something I want to get rid of, because with the kind of varied interests I have, filler material is a pretty nasty accusation to stamp on anything that I put on this channel. However, with the eradication of the concept of a side series leaves the question what the heck to do with the remaining vlogs on here, especially when YouTube's new end screen feature might bump someone over to a vlog, so you may like some flashbang blue screen parody something or another that I do on here, and hey, related video, you go over blah 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 for 35 minutes. Yeah, that sort of thing. You could say this is more damage caused by the YouTube algorithms, but sometimes you do have to say that certain things are a product of their time, and it needs to be represented in the proper context. But the big thing is not to be totally embarrassed that you try to hide your past. I have the Dailymotion channel. I have geek links that will link to the Dailymotion channel if people don't have Dailymotion accounts and don't feel like making one. It will be notably easier to keep track of the other stuff that I do from here than in previous years, but expect changes. Definitely expect changes. I already have this year earmarked for that sort of thing. One of the things actually I'm thinking of doing is axing almost all my sugar intake because I've become sensitive to it. I'm so used to not eating a lot of sugar now that even the stuff in cereal can mess with me. And quite frankly, I've had it with feeling like there's a sock in my mouth because of added sugar that I wasn't keeping tabs on. But that's another discussion entirely. Bottom line, don't get involved in YouTube if you can't handle embarrassment, because it's not if, but when you encounter it. It's part of the rite of passage / growing pains that one experiences just from gaining more experience with this sort of thing, and should be considered a learning experience. If you have to represent stuff in a certain context, like this is a product of its time, then do so. But the big thing is, understand you will be embarrassed at some point, and unless you're planning on having a bubble of content where things get deleted after X amount of time every time, you gotta stand up and face that instead of cowering away in the corner. In any event, I hear loud cars. People are getting over their hangovers enough to start making noise, even though they can't go very fast on these little town roads here. But, well, it's good to see that people are finally getting up after what happened last night for New Year's and how horrible 2016 was. Welcome to 2017, everybody. Thanks for listening. This is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.